Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us again for today's session on body-worn camera tagging. My name is Brittany Cunningham, and I am the project manager. And as a reminder, points of view or opinions expressed herein do not necessarily represent the official position or policies of the U.S. Department of Justice. I will now pass it off to Senior Advisor and Body-Worn Camera Training and Technical Assistance Lead, Retired Public Safety Director, Jeff Smith. Jeff.
Thanks, Brittany. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming to the session on tagging today and some different things that we're going to talk about with, approaches to tagging, maybe a little bit about compliance, some lessons learned, some best practices, and some interesting things that some agencies are doing or have dealt with in regards to tagging. Before I get into too much here, I'm joined by representatives from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, also from Cuyahoga Metropolitan Housing Authority and Kirkland Police Department. And I would like for them to introduce themselves if they could, please. So if we could start with maybe with Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department representatives.
Good morning, everyone. Lieutenant Chadwick here. I'm the unit commander for body-worn camera unit established to support our program. With me, I have Chris Harris, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Harris. I am the IT manager for the body-worn camera unit, Homicide Bureau.
Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Meadows with the LA County Sheriff's Department, also with the body-worn camera unit.
Thank you. And how about Kirkland?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Melissa Petrichor, and I'm the administrative commander here at the Kirkland Police Department and the body-worn camera project manager.
Thank you. And Cuyahoga.
Hello, everybody. John Smitty. I'm the body-worn camera administrator for CMHA.
Thank you. Appreciate the introductions. As I said, we're going to talk a little about tagging today and some of the things that you all are doing. And I know that question sometimes comes up by, what is the definition of tagging, and what are we talking about? Well, tagging is kind of a wide concept. So it could be anything from what are your actual categories and are you having issues there? Are you having issues with the compliance end with tagging, with getting officers to fulfill those tagging requirements, whether that's during, after, or if there's switches to be made because maybe they were tagged inappropriately. And it can even come down to the concept of tagging with making sure that it's the correct incident number or complaint number or things like that. So it's kind of that wide breadth when it comes to tagging in general. So what I'd like to do is start out with Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department and let them kind of just talk to us through some of the things that they've been doing with some adjustments and some interesting things they've done to try to help with some of those issues. So I will turn it over to you all and we will go from there.
So I'm the unit commander for our body-worn camera project. I'll go through a brief introduction of our program, but I really want to focus the bulk of our time showing our technical solution for when it comes to tagging. So if we can go to the next slide, we'd appreciate it. So right now we have purchased 5,248 body-worn cameras. Out of those, we've had 4,600 deployed. We still have 2 more bureaus to deploy to. We have over 100 physical locations. We have to dock these cameras, 31 patrol stations, and specialized commands. We have about 2.2 million calls per service or observations that we do every year, which are traffic stops, pedestrian stops, and so on. And so far, we have 6.6 million pieces of evidence within our system. This is since October 1st of 2020. Over the last 12 months, we have a 96.2% compliance, activation compliance, meaning they activate their camera per policy. We actually measure that and we are able to get our activations tagged at 99.8. Actually, this morning is 99.85% of all activations within the system are tagged. How we did that, we try to focus more on a technological way to do it. 5,000 cameras is a lot. And we have, with so many different locations and so much supervision that we have to do with these, we had to find a technical way to provide feedback to our employees. We realized early on that if they weren't using the system appropriately, they weren't getting that feedback to let them know that they weren't. So they're going to keep doing the same thing until someone tells them otherwise. So we provided this technical solution with the dashboard and created in Power BI. So this is just a snapshot of what we do. It shows all of our activation data between actual body worn camera activations, whether those activations are tagged, if a deputies are responding to calls for service that have not been issued a camera, so we can make sure they get trained. We combine all of our data from evidence.com, which is our digital evidence management solution. And we also bring in our CAD data and merge it together, and then we produce this report. This report goes from the macro size, which is the entire department, down to the individual employee's performance. And I apologize for rushing through because I want to make sure everybody has time for their presentations. With that, right now our employees don't all have access to that dashboard, just their supervisors do. So what we've done as a workaround is we generate automated emails from the system that lets them know every day for those activations that they didn't tag videos for, or suggest calls for service that they responded to and didn't activate their camera, as well as those that have indicated that the call for service does not require an activation. However, in their call narrative, they've said they've contacted someone, which would require an activation. So an example of one of these emails, as you can see, it talks about compliance at the very top in bold. This is what for this time period, which is the past week. It tells them which specifically was calls for service, what their unit narrative says. That way they have a chance to fix it. So if it is exempted, they're actually able to go into our CAD system and adjust it and exempt themselves if it's appropriate. We also have taken this one step further. So an issue with tagging that we identified is if an employee has not properly identified or tagged their video, investigators later are missing these pieces of evidence that they're filing with the district attorney's office or city attorney's office. So now recently we've started producing these emails to our investigators to tell them, hey, there's information in this system or evidence in this system that may be related to your case that's already not in it. And we've linked this a few different ways. We looked at their evidence ID tags, we looked at the incident number, which we use for tagging, as well as pulling the multicam data, which shows the digital link in between cameras recording at the same incident. And it's not really the investigator's fault, because in California, we have 1 day to file misdemeanors and 2 days to file felonies. Sometimes these deputies, for whatever reason, upload their evidence at 3 days. They're not supposed to, but they do. And the investigator never knows that this evidence is missing from their case. So now I'll transition to Chris Harris, and he's going to provide you a live demonstration of the dashboard. This is live data. It's real data. We've just anonymized it. Go ahead, Chris.
Good morning and afternoon, everybody. So again, this is we're using Power BI. Power BI is a data aggregator. So we aggregate data from our CAD, from our training record systems, from evidence.com, and there may be a couple additional systems that we use. So deputies aren't inputting information into Power BI, it's just collecting the data and presenting it. So I'll give you guys a brief overview of the first screen that our lieutenant displayed to you. This area right here shows for each month all the calls for service that had a video, which is green, versus did not have a video, red, and which calls for services that were exempted from having a video over the timeline. This area right here shows all of our activations in the system, how many have been tagged, over 2.9 million for that time frame, and how many have not been tagged, about 6,000. This area shows how many deputies have been trained versus not trained, and who are responding for calls for service or doing other types of police work. This area right here shows for each call for service what's the average video time. I would say over about October of 2022, we deployed a random audit video audit for our supervisors to audit the deputies. And from that point, there was a significant increase in the video time for our deputies. This is a station view. It just presents the same information, but only thing new is in this area. Give it a couple seconds to load. It's a per deputy breakdown of their performance over the indicated time period. So you could see that this deputy, they're activating their cameras at a 77% compliance rate. If you go over, you could just see additional details related to that deputy. If you wanted to have a clear visual of that deputy, you could go to the employees report, and it'll just break down the same information for that deputy with the same visuals. We also have a weekly report that details are for each station and bureau, their compliance over the past 7 days. This report right here shows, so our deputies are able to exempt themselves from having a video for a particular call for service. This report identifies areas where that deputy may have exempted themselves, but probably shouldn't have. So if the narrative in a particular call for service indicates that they arrested somebody or they contacted somebody and they're exempting themselves from having a video, this will highlight that. So as you'll see over time, this has steadily decreased. We have a report for contacts with short video. So this flags a contact where a video length is shorter than 95% of their similar call types. As you can see over time, that has decreased also. We also have a report for untagged activations. You can pick a particular deputy, detail each untagged activation for them. I guess all these deputies are good. We also have a category for accidental activation. So if a deputy accidentally turned their camera on, they could indicate that when they clear the video. And this just details how many accidental activations they had over that particular time period. This report details how many times the deputies are uploading their evidence, their cameras late, and how many videos they have over that particular time period. So we'll move into our cases potentially missing evidence. As Lieutenant Chadwick was saying, that sometimes deputies upload their videos late, or they may not tag their video, so the detective may not know that this particular piece of evidence exists. Or we also use something called community links, where citizens can upload their own evidence, say, for example, a Ring camera. And sometimes they'll upload that 5 days after the case was created. So in that case, the detective may not have filed or uploaded that evidence to the DA or the city attorney. So we've been sending emails to these detectives, and over time, what the email details is for each case, how many pieces of evidence there are included in the case and which pieces of evidence may be missing out of the case. And we do that by running a search on the ID field to see if it matches the case ID, and also using multicam data if another camera was recording in the same area at the same time within 30 feet. So with that, I know it was kind of short. I just want to respect the time for the other participants. That's all I have. If you have any additional questions.
Thank you all, and I appreciate it. And yes, this is very expansive, and there's a lot, and I know that you covered a lot. And I will. I'm going to ask a few follow-up questions after we kind of wrap up with everyone. But one quick one that I would like to ask before I move on to our next agency is just. And I saw it at the beginning and you mentioned it. After you rolled this out and the officers started getting those, like the auto-generated like emails with the info, how was that received? I mean, did they seem appreciative? Like, hey, this helps us out so that we can identify it easier, compared to their supervisor coming in and saying, hey, you got these, et cetera. How was that received by everyone?
So we actually still receive feedback now, even after we've been doing this for about 1.5 years. It was pretty well received. There are some, you're always going to have some naysayers, and then we point out, well, the system's telling you this because you did this wrong, and they go, oh, okay. Then they have that moment of clarity. So it was pretty well received. The way we perceive it and the way we present it to them, that this is just to allow them to correct their behavior by themselves without having to involve a supervisor. So that way we're trying to keep them out of trouble. We're trying to keep them compliant with policy while at the same time enabling the justice system to work, to make sure that the evidence is properly tagged, the detective receives it and provides it to the district attorney and city attorney so they can handle discovery with the public defender's office or defense attorneys. So we make them understand that entire process, and it all begins with them. They're the first section of that justice system, right? And that foundation, we help establish that with them. So that way it's as secure and seamless as possible. So we make them understand that.
Excellent, thank you.
And
And,
I'll just add just a
oh, sorry,
little
go
bit to that. When we first rolled this out, we were probably, our activation compliance was around 50 to 60%.
Yeah.
And within a short few months, we were up towards 90, 95%. So it improved, and with the emails especially.
Excellent. And just a real quick, real fast, my understanding, I just want to make sure I'm correct, because I know you guys tied in a bunch of systems into this to basically collect the data, compare it, and then help generate your reports. It also, I'll make the statement, and you tell me if I'm correct or not. You also have it set up so that it actually funnels in everything to check to see if the tagging actually the correct tag, correct? That's not I mean, you do it manually also, but or am I wrong there?
So it's suggestive, right? So we
Okay.
always say this dashboard it's a pointer. So if
Okay.
if we talk about activations, if someone's showing a low activation, it's incumbent upon that patrol stations to investigate that. Same thing when we suggest evidence related to a case. We say it's potentially identified evidence, and meaning the investigator needs to evaluate each piece of evidence we've suggested individually to ensure it actually belongs in that case. But we have given them a way to disposition it so it doesn't keep showing up to them in an email.
Excellent, thanks.
And
So
if a
go ahead,
deputy
Chris.
fat fingers an ID, right, they put in the incorrect ID, they'll get an email from our system saying, hey, you don't have a video for this particular call for service, right? And they say, yes, I did. And then they'll go back into evidence.com and realize that they put in the incorrect ID. So they're self-correcting with the emails too.
Right.
This, I
If
want to
I can
add,
I want to add one more thing too. The regex, right? If you're not familiar with the regex, that only certain number and letter formats can be accepted into our DEMS. So that way, file numbers are only entered one way. Case numbers are only entered a certain way. So that way we have a consistency of the data that's being presented. Power BI pretty much relies on consistency, and trying to make those adjustments is difficult. So if one learning lesson for us, and it was established by Sergeant Meadows early on, is to set up that regex so that way the system can only receive it one way.
I just want to add one more thing is also with this, we had the office of the sheriff. So the sheriff himself pushed this down. So it's not just the system, but the people emailing us with issues and stuff was relatively low to the volume of data that we were asking them to come into compliance with. So it's not something to be scared of if somebody wants to start something like this, but we did have support questions. They were relatively low for how big we were though.
Excellent, thank you very much. And so I'm going to transition on here and move to Kirkland next with Melissa and to talk a little bit about what they have going on. And again, kind of interesting, or I should say very interesting, based on, and Melissa, I'll let you do the talking, but kind of intro into you, kind of that challenge, LA Sheriff's Department is talking a little bit about how they were having the issues with trying to figure out how do we get this compliance up, what's going to work best. We have all this stuff and, they developed this. And then you're kind of running into some issues with that messaging and, getting it to sink in and that sort of thing around a lot of issues, including tagging, and kind of came up with some neat way to deal with that. So I will turn it over to you to kind of talk through that.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Well, I get to be your comedy relief portion of the hour today. And when I was doing our reporting out for the grant, I explained that during the body-worn camera process in the project, we developed a way to try to engage officers in a non-traditional way. We have a lot of younger generation officers, so we call them TikTok cops or Tik coppers. They like audio visual engagement, and we started finding out that when they come to me and I show them how to do something, it anchored a little bit easier. So during one of our project meetings, the thought was, let's train the officers to make videos by teaching them through videos. So we created a concept called BlueTube, which is YouTube for cops. And so we started early on, and the tagging video that I have for you today is one of our more silly videos. And it was really early on before we learned how to crop videos properly and not have to talk the whole way without making a mistake. So we've gotten better at it, but the video requirements are that they're 3 minutes or less, and they try to cover one topic. It's hard not to segue into other topics, but we try to keep it at 3 minutes. It's an internal BlueTube area where they have all the videos. And we've expanded out to do taser videos and PDR videos. And so we found that we've had a lot of success with less people coming to me and wanting me to show them again the video. They'll just play the video. We also put very silly, engaging pieces in the video that we find that they're not so humdrum about watching it. They seem to think it's kind of entertaining. My officers that are very good at in TikTok and making videos, that generation, they also make their own videos. And so what better way to learn something than to teach it and to create a video teaching other officers to do it. Now, we've had some parameters. One, this is not available to the public, and two, you do have to run it by me before you publish it, because their sense of humor can go a little sideways sometimes. But it actually, we also offer the PDFs for the traditional learning and the manuals, but we're trying something a little different, and it seems to be working. We have a great tagging rate as well, but I don't think it's because of this video. But I will show you this video, and I won't go all the way through it with respect to the time for everyone else, but if you want, I can share it and we'll play it, and you can get an idea of what we're doing. This video is a tutorial on how to add IDs to body-worn camera video in evidence.com. IDs are the incident or case number and require a 2-digit year and a full 8-digit number. Auto tagging will add IDs to the majority of body-worn camera videos, about 99% of them. However, we are finding some situations where auto tagging didn't add the ID to the video. Auto tagging runs about 5 times per day, so the ID may not be there immediately, depending on when it last ran, but it should be there by your next shift. If the ID is not there, you will need to add it manually.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
In addition to adding body-worn camera IDs, through the Axon View app on your phone, there are 2 ways to add IDs to your body-worn camera video in evidence.com. The first way is from the evidence screen, which is what will appear when you first log in. You can search for your body-worn camera videos by putting in the title Axon Body, which is what the videos automatically are titled, or at least begin with that, and then your username here, and it will only pull up your videos. Or you can use the My Evidence, which will pull up your videos labeled Axon Body. If the ID is the same for multiple videos, you can multi-select the videos. Otherwise, you would just select one. For your videos that you have indicated as an accidental activation, when you click the buttons on your body camera, it adds a category, accidental test activation. You don't have to put in an ID for those. You can just ignore them. So you basically get the idea of trying to keep like TikTok type videos of processes. I will follow up with, you can make these videos, these screenshot videos and audio through PowerPoint. So there's no special need to purchase any fancy equipment. Although when we started adding pieces to the video, memes and things like that, we did use a Canva product to try to piece those together, make them a little smoother. Unfortunately, this was early on in January, and we were just trying to throw out as many of these videos as we could, so it's a little bit choppy, but we're getting much better at it. And again, like I said, you can do it in PowerPoint. You just turn it on, it records the mouse and the monitor and your voice, and we just put it in a channel. They can access it from their phones. They can watch it for 3 minutes. We just try to make it a little bit humorous. We've tried adding Easter eggs sometimes. So if we expect them to watch a video and figure it out, maybe in the middle of the video, we ask them to do something like email Melissa your favorite fruit. I get a lot of emails about fruit, but it does give me an idea of how often we're engaging those officers and whether they're making, we're getting our point and getting that training across. I think with administrative functions, there's a little more room for comedy in their lives, considering operationally, we don't typically have as much fun, but when I'm teaching them how to put things into a system, it's nice to add a little comedy.
No, that's fantastic. And, you just mentioned, the fact that, you already have PowerPoint, so you're utilizing that. And then with YouTube, you can just create a channel and make it private, and there's no cost for you to do that either, correct?
Yes, absolutely. We just utilized our SharePoint. And once you create it in PowerPoint, it has the option to save as an MP4. It's really simple. And then I would just put it on the SharePoint and they have access to it, but you can go the other route with the YouTube as well.
Now, just real quick before I move on to my next one, I don't think I've asked you this about this. Do you track at all, like your engagement, like through the videos, or if, how many have actually viewed it, things like that from your department at all?
Yes. So one of the benefits of having it on SharePoint is to figure out how many times it's been watched, but people have a tendency to watch it multiple times. So I have more watches than I have officers. So I find that entertaining as well. But one of the best pieces about this is engaging the officers to make their own videos. Something they find funny, or my PDR specialists right now are coming up with a really funny video about holding a license still in front of the camera. For being able to redact that license is very complicated when you're moving it around all the time. So they're coming up with a funny video to engage, but getting the whole staff involved in it has been successful.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're
like
welcome.
I said, I do have some questions for everyone that I'll come back to here in a little bit, but I'd like to move on to John from Cuyahoga, which I know that you've done a lot too with especially tagging and compliance and all of that, with some challenges too that you kind of work through to try to target and work on getting that rate up and watching it and things like that. So I will be quiet and turn it over to you.
Well, thank you. And I apologize. I must have missed a memo. This is a multimedia presentation, but I'll do the best I can with my charm and dashing smile, I suppose. So I'm going to start from the beginning a little bit here with what actual tagging is. And the last video we watched kind of spells it out. The ID, which is your case report or incident report number. And then we title our videos as well with what actually is the video itself. And then we have to categorize it with a retention category. This is evidence. I treat it like it's an evidence bag. So the report numbers have to be accurate. The title of the bag or the evidence has to be accurate. What is actually in the bag? And then how long are we keeping it? And if any of those three things are mislabeled, we have serious problems on our hands. And there's a lot of things that go along with that we as administrators have to pay attention to. And if for anyone who's implementing or developing a system now, hopefully this will resonate with you. Getting good patterns up front, good habits up front with identifying your evidence. LA said it best, consistency is key. If you have people throwing their evidence as 2023-12345, and then some people do 23-12345, then the third guy goes 0023-, you're all over the place. and evidence has to be consistent. Those small things will look really weird on an audit report. And when you're trying to find evidence for a detective, or when a supervisor is trying to consolidate like evidence for a case, it's gonna be very difficult for that to be done when all the ID numbers themselves are all over the place, let alone how we title our videos, how we actually label them for what is inside. Some of my team still has this nasty habit of giving me a dissertation in the title bar. It was an assault, cool, call it an assault. But some guys call it an assault referred to charges the prosecutor's office doesn't want to pursue. And just call it an assault, man, call it what it is. And then we get into the category. And this is, I think, for all of us, a good learning point. I've worked 3 systems now in my last couple of years for body worn cameras, and we've experimented with upwards of 60 retention categories, and we consolidated all that down into 4. Because I know if you're using like a Motorola system, you're tagging your video by hand on your device. You're pressing an arrow and you're going down a list in alphabetical order. You're looking for the word threats. And then you jump too fast. Now you're in S's. Oh, now I'm in Q's. This is weird. Start all over again. Versus 1, 2, 3, or 4. So what we did to make that process simpler during our pilot phase, we were testing Motorola versus Axon, is we were experimenting with, let's try calling it what it is in a retention. So, threats have a retention period of 2 years. Assault has a retention period of 2 years. But a felonious assault has a retention period of 5 years. So we were going through all these different things, and officers were getting confused, and it was like, what are we doing here? So we took all those categories, we lumped them into 4. Category 1, sex crimes and homicides. So those are retained indefinitely. We're never going to delete them. You go category 1, it's hard to mistake that right there. Category 2s for us is all felony crimes, death investigations, motor vehicle crashes, officer use of force, investigate, anything with the use of force attached to it, vehicle pursuits. Category 3 is all misdemeanors and generic calls for service, any non-activity that maybe an officer stopped a vehicle and didn't write a citation or did, doesn't matter. That's going to be a category 3. And then category 4s are all of our tests, inadvertent activations, or things that maybe an officer pressed the button thinking he's getting into something and it turned out to be nothing. So we just call those administrative functions. Those are purged after 90 days. And this is where it gets really weird. We have auto tagging built in, which it sounded like a lot of the people who presented today also do, through our CAD, like through our LEARN system. And the problem is, any video that I record that gets auto tagged, it gets categorized based on what kind of call for service that it was. So if I get sent to a call for service for a suspicious condition or a male sleeping in a hallway and I arrive and that guy's dead, well, if I don't tag my video manually and I rely on the system to do it for me, now I have a potential homicide video that's been labeled as a category 3, and it's not going to stand up to the retention levels I need it to. So as an administrator, we caught on to these things pretty early during our pilot and during our implementation phase, the first couple of months. And right now, fortunately, with the vendor that we've chosen, I get email alerts when category 4 videos have been quarantined for deletion. So I get to see the list of all videos that are being deleted in the next 30 days. So I can look at them, not watch them all. So I can look at how they're labeled, how long they are, what they were categorized as. If I got a 15-minute video categorized as inadvertent activation, I'm going to open that thing up, make sure there's not something important on it before I let it get deleted. And I've caught homicide videos. I've caught sex offense videos that were up for deletion that were miscategorized because someone relied on the system to do it, or they let their, fat thumbs get in the way and they weren't paying much attention as they were clicking between 1 and 4. So that's some of the ways we've kept things a little simpler for our team, because 60 retention category is ridiculous. It's confusing for everybody, especially me as an administrator. And then we have to identify all those different retention levels, but keeping it simple to 4 is my recommendation. It's worked great for us. It makes it a heck of a lot simpler for me, for sure. but verify your tagging as whoever your body worn camera administrator is. That's a big part of the job, especially when you know you got videos that are being quarantined for deletion. That's a big deal. Is once they're gone, a lot of our vendors don't hang on to them forever. You've only got a little bit of time to ask for them back before they're gone off the servers for good. And I would hate for any of us to lose crucial, critical evidence because we weren't paying attention to our tagging. It's just food for thought and some considerations that we've picked up through trial and error with our body worn camera implementation system, especially with regards to tagging and categorization for retention.
Really appreciate that. And yeah, you know, and that is a topic that comes up quite often when it comes to tagging. What categories, how many categories, what do they look like? And you know, every agency, you know, it's similar to talking about body worn camera policy, right? We may all be very similar, but we have to tweak those down to what's the best for our agency. And you know, I'm aware there's some agencies out there that have over 100 categories for their videos, and it works for them. I don't understand that, but for them that's fine. And some it needs to be down to 4, 5, 6, whatever that magic number is. So trying to deal with that a little bit. I think one of the questions that I'm seeing right now that I think would be good just to ask kind of everybody, you know, do all of you on here have in your body worn camera policy, basically the process specific for tagging in that policy, like telling them exactly how they should tag?
I'll jump in on that one if that's okay. So we do have policy that they have to tag their videos with the evidence ID. I agree with Sergeant Smitty regarding the categorization, by the way. We only have 3. It's all time-to-time retentions, and those rules are dictated by the structure of our file number. And with our file number, we only have 2 retentions, either 9 years or 0, meaning forever. And so it's whatever incident dictates, that's the retention it gets. Anything else that doesn't require criminal investigation is 3 years. So we keep ours simple. But our reporting mechanisms drive the metadata that gets added. You know, from the file number to the structure of the file number to the incident, it tells the user what category to use. And just on a side note, we don't do auto tag. We experimented with it. We have a CAD that was built in 1988. We still use it. So you have 1988 data trying to mix into the new millennium. It's just not working well. And we found that auto tagging just was not reliable or accurate for us. So we've achieved this 99.81% from what I saw in there tagging rate without auto tagging. That's all manual for us.
Melissa, your policy include the process?
Yes, we do use auto tagging, and it has worked very well for us. We found some instances where if we have like an FTO and an officer, both videos wouldn't get auto tagged, but we've worked through all of that, and they don't spend a lot of time tagging their videos at all. It's pretty reliable. I was surprised. As far as categories are concerned, we anchored our categories to the clearing codes. So if you clear, even though you get sent on a particular type of call that wouldn't necessarily result in an arrest, but it did result in arrest, it categorizes it as a clearing code for us to go in and look at that retention. So we use the clearing codes instead of the call types. And officers don't add categories at all. We have the clearing codes, add them, and then we have a body worn camera specialist that goes through and looks at those retentions tied to those clearing codes, and we move forward from there.
John?
Yeah, our policy, we do kind of break down what a ID title and categorization should look like. And we do ask that, well, we don't ask, we put it in policy. You will, shall, must, are commanded to manually enter in your ID title and categorization prior to upload. We have the auto tagging as a backup. And I found that, and I wish I had Kirkland's experience with it. I found it's less than 90%. And that's why we don't rely on it as our sole means of categorization for these videos and tagging. So we make them do it manually, and then we double check it. We're small enough we can get away with it, though. So big departments like LA County Sheriff's Office, God's bless you. You need that kind of, extra, thorough technology. We don't necessarily need that at our level, but it's nice to have it. And our system has it kind of built in already with performance and kind of letting us know when there's low activation rates and low ID and categorization rates. But we got to stay on top of it, even though you have all these checks and balances in place. You have to still manually double check everything. It's my recommendation.
Yeah.
I think it all ties to how you plan your project. One thing we were insistent upon is getting cell phones for all our deputies, which was a very high expense, a tough sell to our board of supervisors, but it allows them the facility to tag things in the field and stay out in the field where we want them. So it sounds like, based on some of the questions in the chat, that's something that any new body worn camera project should consider.
And I just want to add one thing to that. The mobile phones were a game changer. The cameras themselves were, but the mobile phones were a game changer. It let our patrol deputies stay in the field 15 to 20% longer because of those phones. No longer did they could take additional photographs and audio and get evidence from private persons, instantly upload into the cloud. Or before, they'd have to get those phones, bring them into the station, or get the photos, bring them to the station, download them, burn to a disk, print them out on paper, and book them into evidence. That saves them at least 1 to 2 hours at the end of their shift doing those things, on top of the fact that now they can tag their videos in the field. And all they have to do, the only responsibility they have is to dock their camera at the end of shift.
We did the same thing. I'm going to second that. They are a real game changer. Get cell phones for your team if you can. It really helps.
So we have an interface between evidence.com, which is an Axon product, and a Tyler CAD system. It did take a little time. Sorry about my alarm. It did take a little time for us to figure out the algorithm with Axon, but they were super supportive with it as far as getting the time. So when our auto tagging is based on the officer personnel number and the call time frame of them going. So we spend a lot of time trying to get that algorithm just right. And still to this day, if they go to a call and they're called off of it, if they don't turn their camera back off and they go to a different call, it can get all kind of switched up a little bit. But as part of our program, we hired an additional PDR specialist to handle body-worn cameras, and an entire civilian, I think that was one of the questions, body-worn camera specialist. And all they do is evidence.com. So they're a digital media specialist. And she's responsible for just maintaining that as if it's a property room. And she goes through and looks at the categories and every day looks at that. We also set up a lot of alerts, automatic reports out of performance with Axon. So we have that piece where it will send the officers emails when their IDs are not submitted, which ones have not been added. That sends every Wednesday. We tried to make this as automatic as possible. And the categories, we also worked with Axon on getting that algorithm just right with the clearing codes. And so now we can go in, or my evidence specialist can go in and pull up a tickler file for everything that may be coming up for retention. And we go through and we review each of those case numbers to make sure they are indeed related to what we need to have for retention. And we're going through it with a fine-tooth comb because we just launched this, but we're developing systems and processes to make it less meticulous and hands-on. So we're seeing that, like our tickets and our violations, we have a 3-year retention. Those we don't necessarily have to look at that closely because they're cleared with the same thing. So we're finding easier and quicker ways to get it on an automated process. But even though we launched January, we're still looking at process improvement through the whole thing. We're constantly have eyes on it and constantly looking at ways to improve now that we have enough data to really look at it.
So this one I'd like to touch on. It's going to get into the weeds a little bit, but I think it's fantastic. Here's the question, and I'm sure you've seen it. Can you walk us through your compliance and audit process for tagging videos? Who does the compliance review and how often? So depending on what you've got going on, it could be very complex here, or it could be short and sweet. So we can just start in and see how it goes. So LA, go ahead.
I think you've seen our process already. We've tried to automate, just like as Ms. Petrichor said, that automation is key. And we have 4,600 cameras out right now. 5,200 shortly. And then, by the way, I forgot to mention, we're going to be adding about 4,700 cameras for our jail system. So we're going to be bumping up against 10,000 cameras. So we try to automate those things. We do shift audits. So every watch commander, watch sergeant has to do an audit of one body-worn camera video for the same shift the day before. So they're getting reviewed in that manner. They're looking for activation compliance, recording the entire contact, and whether they ID'd their video. And if they don't check those boxes or don't do those tasks, and then they have to provide what corrective action they're doing. So that's an everyday procedure we do. Plus we have the dashboard, plus we have all these emails that go out. The emails go out to those station operations, by the way, to report on their own employees. So we're giving them all these tools to do the work themselves. You know, we have 23 individual patrol stations plus several other specialized units. I have a unit of about 35 personnel just to handle our body-worn camera program, but that's not enough to manage to audit 5,200 cameras. It's nearly impossible. So we have to push down to the lowest level possible, but give them the tools to do that. So that's pretty much how we addressed that situation.
Thank you. Melissa?
So we have a layered approach to it, and we're almost looking at everything daily just because we're so new to having body-worn cameras, but we're a small agency. I only have, well, I don't want to say only, but I have 116 sworn. So one person managing that program isn't unreasonable. So we do have Axon Performance, which was hugely helpful as far as sending out those automated emails about categorization, activation rate. That was something that we've streamlined and figured out how to build some spreadsheets and figuring out how to identify those. So it's like a multi-layered approach. Our supervisors also review cameras or videos, and they're required to do that monthly. And then if they don't, then we go back and find out. So they have a specific amount, but that can all be set up in performance. But I will tell you, the biggest hurdle that we had when we launched body-worn cameras was officers and how much time they were going to be spending doing administrative work with these videos. They were very much against spending an hour after each shift trying to wade through these videos and tag them and categorize them. And so from the very start of the program, we knew that we needed to make sure that that was not going to be a hindrance, or we wouldn't be able to sell this program very well. Our officers wanted body-worn cameras videos or about body-worn cameras from the very beginning, but so we had to make that as user-friendly as possible. And so I'm stunned that LA County doesn't have an auto tagging, because we didn't go live until we knew that worked. And we spent a lot of time with like test videos and running around with our CAD system and our operations center to make sure it worked before we launched. And that solved probably 95% of the work that the officers needed to do. And we still do checks and balances on it, but we wanted to make sure that that interface worked, and it was important. So, but we've put a lot of different layers in place to make sure that, you know, we're not losing any videos, and there's constant emails about these are up for deletion, are these accurate to be deleted, and we have lots of checks and balances. And we don't have the program perfect yet, but we are working towards it. But the auto tagging was a godsend.
Excellent, thanks. Smitty?
So we also lean on Axon's performance program for our auditing software, which it looks a lot like what LA's using. So if they design that on their own, they're doing a great job. That stuff's great, but you have to learn how to interpret the data as well. So having the system in place to capture what's going on is great. You need someone to be able to interpret that data, because activation rates, power cycling, like how often are officers turning their cameras off in the field, a lot of those things can be reconciled rationally if the person interpreting the data knows what they're actually looking at. So having a bunch of bars and red and green spheres telling you how good or bad you are at certain things is great. And it really helps me a lot as an administrator. But then when I report to my chief or to his betters about what I'm actually looking at, I got to break it down into what that actually means. So automated auditing software is incredible. And what I'm using, it's pretty good, I'm not gonna lie. But you got to be able to read the data and interpret it to someone who isn't looking at the same things you are. That's what I recommend that you would do up front. Start with that, what this data means, and then start to reconcile it. And that's how we operate. So we talk about layers for performance. That's what I use for sure.
Excellent. Well, I know we bumped over on the time, but my opinion, it was well worth it. I cannot thank all of you enough for participating and sharing. And I am sure there's going to be follow-up questions and things like that, and, you know, get further in, and everything that you're doing is extremely interesting and pertinent to all this. So thank you. I'm going to be quiet, turn it back over to Brittany, but appreciate all of you participating.